All right, let's continue. So we were talking about the four types of tissue. So epithelial was one. So protection, covering stuff, lining stuff. So blood vessels, bladder, lungs, and so on. Now, next is connective tissue. Connective is huge. It's a huge category. Think of connecting. So like blood connects, tendons, ligaments connect, cartilage cushions, right? But, so that falls under that. So it's a really, really big group of tissues. So if we look, it says most widespread and abundant, forms supporting networks, sheaths of muscles, connects muscles to bone, so tendons, ligaments. Bone is dense. Bone is considered a connective tissue. Blood is considered a connective tissue. So connective tissue is a huge category. Next, muscle. Muscle tissue, there's only three types of muscle. It's either going to be skeletal. Skeletal is what you think about, so like biceps, triceps, quadriceps, gastrocnemius, soleus, pectoralis major, minor, trapezius. Those are skeletal muscles that are attached to bone. Smooth, that doesn't sound, very intuitive, but smooth muscles found along hollow organs. For example, does the stomach contract? Yes, it does, right? So it's smooth muscle. Do blood vessels contract? Yes, they do. So around hollow organs, it says walls of organs, other structures. Finally, cardiac. Where's it going to be found? Only one place. Where? Heart. Okay. Your heart muscle is very specialized. It's muscle. So all muscles contract, and cardiac does too, but only found in the heart, right? And that's the pump that's moving all the blood. Finally, nervous tissue. When you think nervous, what do you think of? You should think of brain and nerves. So the central nervous system. So the brain is made out of nervous tissue. Nerves are made out of nervous tissue. Control, coordinate activities of the body. Now, okay, so we went from cells to tissues, now to organs, right? So multiple different tissues that serve a common purpose. So brain, skin, heart, those are organs. Then organ systems. So like we said, the respiratory system. So the nasal cavity, the throat, the trachea, the bronchi, the alveoli, all one system. So respiratory. Versus the skeletal system, all the muscles, right, in the skeletal system, versus the bone, I said skeletal, that's muscular system, versus skeletal, we're talking about bone, versus, so cardiac, or they don't say cardiac, they say cardiovascular, because it's the heart, which is the pump, and then the blood vessels and the blood that's circulating. Versus the reproductive system, versus the I can't think first, lymphatic system, versus the I want to think of hormones, so the endocrine system. So many systems of the body, right, made out of organs, and then all together, all those organ systems make the whole body. So here, right, says organ system of the body. So integumentary, that's skin, hair, nails; skeletal, muscular, nervous; endocrine, cardiovascular, blood; and the lymphatic system, usually they go together, so that's interesting. They have lymphatic is on its own, and then cardiovascular system contains blood, so they're putting it this way in this book. Respiratory, digestive, forgot about the digestive, right? Breaking down food, absorbing food for nutrients. Urinary, right? Getting rid of wastes. And then reproductive. So all the organ systems are the same between males and females, except for the reproductive. And when I say the same, meaning the anatomy, right, and the physiology. Of course, like in general, male bodies, their bones are thicker, bigger than females. In general, males' muscular system is bigger, thicker than females. But, for example, males have a trapezius, females have a trapezius. Males have a pectoralis major, females have a pectoralis major, and so on. But what's different, reproductive, right, that's the one that's different. Like males have testes, females have ovaries, right? Males have right? The ductus deferens, females have, or the vas deferens, females have the fallopian tubes, right? And so on and so forth. Okay. So anatomical position. If you look at this picture, this guy is standing in anatomical position. You're like, who cares? Okay. You've heard the stories. Someone goes to the hospital, they need to have their right arm amputated. Well, what's their right arm? Is this their right or is this their right? Right? So anatomical position is really important. Okay. You always quote, go into the body. And if you were that person standing, where would your right be? It's always that person's anatomical position. So this is my right, right? So if you came in the body and sat here, this would be your right too. Yeah. Anterior, that's the front. Posterior, that's the back. So anatomical position is pretty important, right? The body's erect, head facing forward, arms by the sides, palms out front. Left and right are from the subject's point of view, not the examiner's. So, now when you go to the doctors, they always, okay, which side's hurting? And they ask you over and over and over again, which is very important. Planes, if we cut the body, like some of the scanning that we see, like MRIs and so on, how are they looking at the body, right? So this is an important picture, right? So here's transverse, that's cutting the body into upper and lower. Here's sagittal, that's cutting the body into right and left. That would be her right and her left. And then frontal, that would be cutting the body into, this is called anterior or the front side, and posterior, the back side. So the anatomical position and the planes are important, especially when you're viewing, let's say you're viewing an x-ray and it's the right arm. Well, which right arm? Okay. Always the patient's right arm. Okay. Is it a sagittal view? Is it an anterior view? What is it? What are you looking at? So here are some directional terms. Superior, inferior, towards the top, superior, away from the top, inferior. So you think of, I got a superior grade, okay? Superior, above, right? Inferior, below. Anterior, posterior, anterior, think of towards the front, posterior towards the back, right? But it's always anatomical position. So anterior is always anterior, right? So that's towards the front. So what if the person's lying on their back or lying on their stomach? Anterior is always, you think of the body in anatomical position. Cephalic means head, right? Towards the head. Caudal, towards the tail. For us, we do have a tail, right? Our sacrum, towards the bottom there. Medial, lateral. If you cut the body right smack in the middle, that's the midline. Medial, if things are closer to the midline. Lateral, if things are further away from the midline. So my nose is medial. My eyes are lateral to my nose, okay? My arms are lateral, right? Proximal, distal. So for example, closer to the body, further away from the body. Like my elbow is proximal. It's closer to the body than my hand, okay? So nearest point attachment to the nearest point of origin, distal. All right, so those are just some examples of directional positional terms. They are important because you will see them over and over and over again. So you do need to know them. Oops, sorry. Cavities, yes. So the body, when I first saw this, when I was learning, I'm like, cavities, they're spaces. Well, yes, there are spaces in the body, but they're not hollow spaces, right? Like the way this picture shows. There's stuff in there, okay? So if you ever take anatomy, and part of anatomy is dissecting, and we cut through. So here, thoracic is the chest. When you cut through, but there's stuff in there, right? The heart's in there, the lungs are in there. And then there's the muscle, the diaphragm right here, that separates the thoracic from the abdominal pelvic cavity. So abdomen, pelvis, pelvic, right? So for females, if they get a pelvic exam, right, the uterus is over here, the ovaries Right? So here's the anterior cavity that contains these cavities. Posterior means towards the back. So here's the posterior cavity. So it has, right? So it says posterior, it has the cranial cavity, cranium. We're talking about the head, and the spinal cavity, right? So kind of shows those body cavities. So again, in reality, they're not just empty. There are organs in there, right? Okay. So sometimes anterior, also called ventral or anterior, dorsal or posterior. Abdominal pelvic cavity. The abdomen is divided into regions, into quadrants. Why? Okay, well, if someone is sick and they're having pain, they're going to point to whatever the region is. Okay. And then, is it here? Is it here? Where is it? Right? Umbilical, epigastric. What does epi mean? On top, above. Gastric. What does gastric mean? Stomach, right? So right on top of the stomach. Umbilical. Hypogastric. Do you remember what hypo meant? Hypo means below, right? So below the stomach. Lumbar, the lumbar regions, iliac. So again, if you have the terminology down, this should be a piece of cake, right? So important body regions, again, for examining, diagnosing when someone comes in feeling pain, right? And I love this because they're showing, here are this is the digestive system, right? So here's the liver, here's the stomach, here are the small intestines, here's the colon, right? The ascending, transverse, descending, sigmoid colon, the rectum would be down there. But again, those are important because if someone's coming in with pain, you gotta try to figure out, okay, what's going on? Do they have appendicitis? Are they, okay, this is going to sound funny, okay? Are they blocked? Are they constipated? Constipation causes a lot of pain. And sometimes if someone's constipated, that might be the source of pain. Or gas, that causes a lot of pain. Or is there something else going on, right? So those are anatomical locations, positions they're talking about in the abdominal region and the quadrants. Vital organs are in the trunk, the pelvic region. They're showing the regions. And then we're getting close to the end of this chapter, head to toe assessment. So again, I don't know, what your backgrounds are, but a lot of you talked about you want to be nurses, yeah? And whether you work in the medical field or not, you've probably heard of this stuff before. So head to toe, when a patient comes in, and they're being assessed, okay? And so in the book, they talk about head to toe assessment. Now, finally, body area terminology. So parts of the body, right? And they don't have, unfortunately, I don't know why they don't have a picture. They should have a picture, abdomen, ankle, arm, back, bones, right? And they should say where these things are located. There should be a picture where it shows the different parts. Eye, for example, opto, think of optometrist, right, for the eye. Foot, think of podiatrist. Pod, we're talking about feet. Let me see, cephalic, we already said that. Cardiologist, cardio, right? So again, derm, skin is derm, think of dermatologist. Gastro means stomach, belly. So there's gastronomy. So dent, think of dentist. You guys, when you're looking at these words, try to have them make sense. If you do that, it's so much easier. If you're not, try to see how does it fit in? Where have I heard these words before? If you don't do that, then it's very difficult. Yeah. You have to have a point of context. So for example, breast, okay, mast, mammo. You've heard of mammogram, you've heard of mastectomy, so try to have those things make sense to you. Chest, thoracic, ear, right? Oto, or right? So auditory, what are we looking at? So again, try to let these things make sense to you. Here, mouth, oral, right? Okay, building your medical vocabulary, and I think we are done because I think this is the end, right? Oh, no, it's not the end. Okay, so lastly in this chapter, drug highlights. So drug, what's a drug? They talk about 5 types, 5 medical uses for drugs, so that's really nice.